Chapter 2. The First of the Three Spirits. When Scrooge awoke, it was so dark that looking out of bed he could scarcely distinguish the window from the walls of his room. He was endeavouring to pierce the darkness with his ferret eyes when the chimes of a neighbouring church struck 12.
"Why, it isn't possible," said Scrooge, "that I could have slept through a whole day and far into another night."
Scrooge went to bed again and thought it over and over, and could make nothing of it. The more he thought, the more perplexed he was, and the more he endeavoured not to think, the more the thought of Marley's ghost bothered him exceedingly. He didn't know whether it was a dream or not. Then he remembered that a spirit should visit him at 1 o'clock. So Scrooge resolved to lie awake until the hour was past, and considering that he could no more go to sleep than go to heaven, this was, perhaps, the wisest solution in his power. The time felt so long that he was more than once convinced he must have sunken into a doze unconsciously and missed the clock. At length it broke upon his listening ear.
"The hour itself," said Scrooge triumphantly, "and nothing else."
He spoke before the hour bell sounded, which it now did with a deep, dull, hollow, melancholy 1. Lights flashed up in the room upon the instant, and the curtains of his bed were drawn aside, I tell you, by a hand. Then Scrooge found himself face to face with the unearthly visitor. It was a strange figure, like a child, yet not so like a child as like an old man. Its hair, which hung about its neck and down its back, was white as if with age, and yet the face had not a wrinkle in it. It held a branch of fresh green holly in its hand. But the strangest thing about it was that from the crown of its head there sprung a bright clear jet of light, by which all this was visible, and which was doubtless the occasion of its using.
"Are you the spirit, sir, whose coming was foretold to me?"
asked Scrooge. "I am." The voice was soft and gentle, singularly low, as if instead of being so close beside him, it was at a distance.
"Who and what are you?"
"I am the ghost of Christmas past."
"Long past?"
inquired Scrooge. "No, your past. Rise and come with me." Scrooge could not plead that the weather was cold, and that he was wearing only his slippers, dressing gown, and nightcap. The ghost's grasp, though gentle as a woman's hand, was not to be resisted. The ghost took Scrooge back in time to a familiar place.
"Good heaven,"
said Scrooge, clasping his hands together as he looked about him.
"I was bred in this place. I was a boy here."
"You recollect the way?" inquired the spirit.
"Remember it?" cried Scrooge with fervour. "I could walk it blindfold."
"Strange to have forgotten it for so many years," observed the ghost. "Let us go on." They walked along the road, Scrooge recognizing every gate and post and tree, until a little market town appeared in the distance, with its bridge, its church, and winding river. Some shaggy ponies now were seen trotting towards them with boys upon their backs, who called to other boys in country gigs and carts driven by farmers. All these boys were in great spirits and shouted to each other, until the broad fields were so full of merry music that the crisp air laughed to hear it. "These are but shadows of the things that have been," said the ghost. "They have no consciousness of us." Why did he rejoice beyond all bounds to see them? Why did his cold eye glisten and his heart leap up as they went past? Why was he filled with gladness when he heard them give each other Merry Christmas as they parted at crossroads and byways for their several homes? What was Merry Christmas to Scrooge? Out and about on Merry Christmas? What good had it ever done to him? "The school is not quite deserted," said the ghost. "A solitary child, neglected by his friends, is left there still." They went, the ghost and Scrooge, inside the house across the way, and to a door at the back of the house. It opened before them and disclosed a long, bare, sad room, made barer still by the lines of desks. At one of these, a lonely boy was reading near a feeble fire, and Scrooge wept to see his poor, forgotten self as he used to be. "I wish," Scrooge muttered, putting his hand in his pocket and looking about him after drying his eyes with his cuff. "But it's too late now." "What is the matter?" asked the spirit.
"Nothing," said Scrooge. "Nothing. There was a boy singing a Christmas carol at my door last night. I should like to have given him something, that's all."
The ghost smiled thoughtfully and waved its hand, saying as it did so, "Let us see another Christmas." Although they had but that moment left the school behind them, they were now in the busy thoroughfares of a city, where shadowy passengers passed and repassed, where shadowy carts and coaches battled for the way, and all the strife and tumult of a real city where. It was made plain enough by the dressing of the shops that here too it was Christmas time again. But it was evening, and the streets were lighted up. The ghost stopped at a certain warehouse door and asked Scrooge if he knew it.
"Know it?" said Scrooge. "I was apprenticed here."
They went in. At sight of an old gentleman in a Welsh wig, sitting behind such a high desk that if he had been 2 inches taller, he might have knocked his head against the ceiling, Scrooge cried in great excitement,
"Why, it's old Fezziwig, bless his heart! It's Fezziwig alive again! This must be one of the Merry Christmas Eves we spent with his family and friends."
The doors opened, and in came all of the guests, one after another, some shyly, some boldly, some gracefully, some awkwardly, some pushing, some pulling. In they all came anyhow and everyhow. Away they all went, 20 couples dancing at once, hands half round and back again, the other way, down the middle and up again, round and round in various stages of affectionate grouping. Always a couple turning up in the wrong place amid laughter. During the whole of this time, Scrooge had acted like a man out of his wits. His heart and soul were in the scene, and with his former self he corroborated everything, remembered everything, enjoyed everything, and underwent the strangest agitation. It was not until now, when the bright faces of his former self and Dick were turned from them, that he remembered the ghost and became conscious that it was looking full upon him, while the light upon its head burnt very clear. "What is the matter?" asked the ghost.
"Nothing particular,"
said Scrooge. "Something, I think," the ghost insisted.
"Nah," said Scrooge, "nah. I should like to be able to say a word or two to my clerk just now. That's all."
"My time grows short," observed the spirit.
Quick.
This was not addressed to Scrooge, or to anyone whom he could see, but it produced an immediate effect, for again Scrooge saw himself. He was older now, a man in the prime of his life. His face had not the harsh and rigid lines of later years, but it had begun to wear the signs of care and avarice. There was an eager, greedy, restless motion in the eye, which showed the passion that had taken root, and where the shadow of the growing tree would fall. He was not alone, but sat by the side of a fair young girl in a mourning dress, in whose eyes there were tears which sparkled in the light that shone out of the ghost of Christmas past. "It matters little," she said softly, "to you, very little. Another love has displaced me, and if it can cheer and comfort you in time to come, as I would have tried to do, I have no reason to grieve." "What love has displaced you?" he asked. "A golden one. You fear the world and love money too much," she answered gently. "I have seen all your nobler dreams fall off one by one until the only passions left, gain and greed, engross you. Is it not true?" "What does it matter?" Scrooge retorted. "Even if I have grown so much wiser, what then? I still love you." She shook her head. "If we had never met, and you were to meet me tomorrow, you would not pursue me. We met when we were both poor, and now you are rich and I'm not good enough. I release you. I hope you will be happy with the life you have chosen." "Spirit, show me no more. Take me home. Why do you torture me?" "One shadow more," said the ghost. They were in another scene and place, a room not very large or handsome, but full of comfort. There was a happy family celebrating Christmas with all their warmth and heartiness. Scrooge recognized Belle, his former girlfriend, and felt the rush of love he had once felt for her, but forgotten. She was married now, and had children, and they were opening presents together. The shouts of wonder and delight with which the unwrapping of every package was received. "Belle," said her husband with a smile, "I saw an old friend of yours this afternoon. Mr. Scrooge it was. I passed his office window, and since it was not shut up, and he had a candle inside, I could see him there. His partner is dying, I hear, and there he sat alone. Quite alone in the world, I do believe." "Spirit," said Scrooge in a broken voice, "take me back. I cannot bear it any longer." He struggled with the ghost to take him back, and finally Scrooge found himself in his own bedroom again. He was conscious of being exhausted and so overcome by an irresistible drowsiness, he barely had time to reel to bed before sinking into a heavy sleep.